Hello, everyone. My name is James Tassi. Before we get started, I'll give you a little bit of history about myself. I'm currently seeking a technical writer role. I have experience working as a technical writer and as a software developer. And in ancient times, I gained a degree in philosophy. So this talk is going to be about assumption. I originally submitted it as a lightning talk for the Write the Docs Portland 2025 conference. It didn't make the cut. I think there's 5 to 10 that are selected. So I put it on the shelf, but I was looking at different positions and I'm seeing some that call for presentation skills. And I don't have any presentations in my portfolio, which is a good note to self or you, the viewer, if you might ever need a presentation next time you give one at work, sanitize the presentation afterwards, redact anything proprietary, and put it in your portfolio. If you want to see the Write the Docs lightning talks or other talks, you can scan this QR code or go to writethedocs.org. So in the spirit of the lightning talk, I'm going to start my timer now. You know what they say about assumption? Well, according to the Under Siege 2 Dark Territory cinematic universe, it is the mother of all F-ups. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's something that you accept as true without question or proof. So an example would be thinking that something is good just because it's popular. A slightly more problematic example would be thinking that just because you made it to the airport in 15 minutes on Saturday night at 10 p.m., that you'll get there in the same amount of time on Monday morning. So another way to think of assumptions is as walls. So as we go through our lives and our careers, and we get certain ideas about how the way we think things work, what can happen is we can build up these assumptions about what the right approach is. And we can end up rejecting new ideas that bounce off of our walls or new technology. An example of this happened to me about a year ago. Someone told me about the design first approach to API development. Now, my experience was in code first, where you build the API and then you extract the API specification from it. Well, you can do the reverse. You could create the API specification, say in a YAML file, um, and that kind of sets the properties of the API. So eventually I came around to it. They're both valid approaches, but I had to get over my initial rejection of the idea just because it was new. So I worked for a number of years in software development companies, and we followed these business models on-premise and software as a service. Now, this might be an oversimplification, but the general process was you gather requirements, you create software and documentation, and then you release, and then you do that again, you create additional versions, and you keep modifying the documentation and the software as needed. Pretty common, right? So fast forward 14 years. I'm here with a fellow tech writer. And a couple months before release, we're talking about how we can make improvements to our company's process. And we say, hey, let's implement Docs as code, let's create a static site, put our docs on there, and then customers can view it. We'll get better feedback that way rather than having to do the Word document back and forth. So we were pretty excited. But there was one thing that I hadn't quite put together yet. See if you can spot it. We were gathering requirements. We were creating software and documentation. And I mean, teams of people, not just myself and fellow tech writer. And then we were handing it over to the customer. Wait, what? So turns out there is a model, closest one I could find to this, which is called build, operate, transfer, where you build the software, you have your DevOps team operate it, and you transfer it to the customer. In this case, we transferred it to them via giving them ownership of the GitHub repo. So you can see some of those ideas that I had, especially creating like a Doxys code site for them. Maybe we could have partially implemented it, put it in their repo, hand it over, but um, it just wasn't the right approach. Thankfully, we didn't, have too long where we spent thinking we could do these things, but still a bit of whiplash there when we realized what was going to happen. So, moral of the story here is basically think of this as, you've got your X and Y axis. On your X axis, negative impact of assumption being wrong. On your Y axis, need to challenge the assumption. So as X goes up, Y goes up. So for example, uh, you know, when we're thinking about how much time do we have to get to that plane, we make an assumption that's problematic. If we get that wrong, Monday morning it's much more busy. But even more problematic is if we think that disabling auto shutdown on reactor number 4, as happened in 1986, thinking that that is going to be okay. In this case, it definitely wasn't. So we have to be vigilant about our assumptions. That's pretty much it. Thank you. You can scan the QR code on the left if you want to get my LinkedIn details. Um, for Write the Docs, you can scan this QR code or go to writethedocs.org. And then finally, my attributions, if you want to see where I got some of this stuff from. Thanks a lot.